So my background before cybersecurity, business continuity and crisis management. Now I think the thing is, we talk a lot about protecting the crown jewels, don't we? What is it important? What are we trying to protect? So why don't we actually have a think about what is it we're talking about, the crown jewels. Now I want you to study this for a moment, and I want you to think about the Tower of London has been around for 1,000 years. The crown jewels have been here for nearly 400 years. And I really want you to think about the defences. So take away all the buildings that are around the tower. And what are you kind of left with? So you're left with multiple fortifications, multiple walls, and then you have the tower itself. Now, a popular misconception is where the actual jewels are kept. Now, a lot of people kind of think it's in the tower. It isn't. They're actually here. This is in the Waterloo block. This is actually where all the military is. So it's a lesson there in deception with regards to where you think the crown jewels are, where they actually are two separate things. So if you're a threat actor trying to think about how do I get through all of these physical defenses, what are all the obstacles that are in my way? Now, to give you some perspective of the fortifications and the level of security that actually goes in to protecting the crown jewels, when we've talked about these walls, look how thick they are. Now, I'm pretty sure you're not going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to burrow through a wall or go over a wall. So what are you kind of left in? And even if you go through this wall, you have a secondary wall inside. And you've got to kind of think about how do I bridge all of those things. But maybe the simplest thing is to go straight to the front door and go, how do I bribe or how do I get past the guard? Because this is really hard for me to get through. So on top of that, the Tower of London is guarded 24/7 and is actually guarded by the military. MOD still looks after this building. So you'll have the yeomans in their nice little outfits that go around and give everybody the overview of how wonderful the tower is and what you can expect. The yeomans are all ex-military, so they are trained. They are armed as well if they need to be. But ultimately, the MOD who's protecting are in this barracks. This is the Waterloo Barracks. It is an active site. But on top of that, so we kind of think I've got to go from all of those defences and we get to the actual crown jewels. We then have multiple biometric authentication, multiple controls, multiple verification with regards to tracking every moment. There's alarms and sensors. So ultimately, that means the closer we get to the crown jewels, the more heightened the level of security. And I want you to think about, when we think about cybersecurity, where is most of the security? Probably not where the crown jewels is. It tends to be on the edge and on the perimeter. But you've got to kind of think about, if I breach that, how quickly can I get here? But ultimately, if you want to move the crown jewels, they do get moved, they still get worn. So when there's major events going on and they need to be wearing all their finery, and there's a strict protocols, there's strict process with regards to that level of verification, the transport, and the tracking of all of those things combined. So it really just gives you a sense of what we're talking about when we're referring to the crown jewels, and ultimately, what does that mean? And I just want to kind of talk a little bit, what does that mean on a cybersecurity perspective? We have to defend through the layers. Ultimately, when we think about the middle, data, what is the threat actor after? What is their motivation? Because it's not gaining access. Yes, they need to gain access from wherever which made possible, but that is not the end goal. That is the start of their process. They have to get to this point in the middle, which means they have to go through all of those layers. They have to go through identity. They have to go through the endpoints. They have to go for networks, infrastructure, applications, and then get to this point. So one of the things I talk about is our strategy for cybersecurity is actually really simple. Now we can talk about all the controls, the technologies, and all the tools that are going to be needed, all the fancy things when it comes to automation and AI, but ultimately it's really, really simple. We have two objectives: stop the access in and stop the exit out. Now, if I refer back to the crown jewels, even if you were able to get right in the middle of where the crown jewels are stored, now what? Because you now have to go back out the way you came, past all the guards, past all of those defenses, and I'm pretty sure by that point, if you've been successful, you're going to get blocked, you're going to get arrested, maybe worse things that happened to you many moons ago. When we think about this in the modern era and where we are now, think about it, how easy, when I get to the data, I can just exfiltrate and I'm away. There's nothing stopping me and blocking me from taking that data, which is why ultimately we have to look at it from two perspectives. And what does this mean ultimately? We always have this kind of cat and mouse game, don't we? Where we're constantly looking at different defenses that are required. But actually, if we know where the end game is, and there's only a finite reasons why you would get there, and only a finite reasons how you would get there, if we know the end, we can work backwards. And this is ultimately when we talk about attack paths. I'm really thinking about how do you gain access, all the different ways you can gain access, but I know the end, we work backwards. And this is looking at what is the path of least resistance. If I'm a threat actor and I'm trying to figure out how do I get in and out as fast as possible without you identifying me, and I know this because I know the ultimate end game, I can start making choices about how I protect that data and how I start putting the rings around that data and protecting the crown jewels. So this is about understanding the attack path, it's understanding the threat, it's understanding the motivation, and then making strategies around that. And ultimately, what does this mean when we kind of think about incident response? We kind of got to move away from this panic zone that we're in. Oh, this is our worst day. Someone's got our data. They've exfiltrated it. Maybe they've encrypted our network as well at the same time. Now what? And we need to kind of think about this is the panic that sets in. With regards to the fact that a lot of threat actors have already done their homework with regards to disrupting backups, disrupting your communications. They know what's coming because they know what the end game is, and they know how to hit all the right buttons. So ultimately, we need to go from this very calm perspective. We have to do our due diligence ultimately that says, if I know the end game, if I know what they're trying to do, I know the steps that they're going to take, what do I need to do in response? How confident am I that when the shit hits the fan, ultimately, how prepared am I and what am I going to do? So this is ultimately about the decisions that need to be made and that level of incident response. Now, some of the really common failings, and this is coming from Microsoft as well, when Microsoft is engaged to speak to multiple customers with regards to the type of incident, type of cyber attacks that we're talking about, there's commonalities. Not just in terms of not having the right visibility, the right defenses, not having the right protections with regards to those crown jewels, but ultimately not having defined roles and responsibilities, not being able to really understand our level of preparedness, and that means that they're stuck. Ultimately. So this comes down to preparation, doing that due diligence, making sure we've got identify those roles and responsibilities, we detect, respond, and we've got those decisions. Now, one of the core things I really want you to kind of think about is ultimately when we think about backup and recovery, how confident are you that you could recover from zero? Literally nothing. I'm talking about an entire operating system. Because ultimately, we don't trust the operating system anymore. Once a threat actor's been in it, we don't know what they've done. They've left back doors in. They've done all of these different things. So ultimately, if we are in that situation, and we've got to kind of be able to tell the board how prepared we are, can you confidently say right now today that if it hits the fan, we've lost our crown jewels, can I recover from zero? It's a really tough decision to be able to make. And this is the communication, making sure we know who to communicate, when to communicate, and ultimately This is really about execution and having those playbooks and testing it over and over, looking for those anomalies, looking for all the things that those threat actors are going to try and do to disrupt our recovery pattern, and making sure we understand that level of disruption. So what does this mean ultimately? What is it really what we're trying to do? We need to do our due diligence. We need to know current state, current exposure, vulnerabilities. What are we doing to close it down? How do we build and how do we deploy software infrastructure properly? How do we protect that identity, that initial access in? How do we harness intelligence so we know who the threat actors are? We know who's coming in, what are they trying to do, but ultimately the end road is always the same. Doesn't matter if it's a state actor, it doesn't matter if it's organized crime, an opportunist, or even an aggrieved insider. Their objective is to get to data. So we know that, we work backwards, and that's how we really need to safeguard the data. And ultimately, key theme for the day, key thing we keep talking about is resilience. We cannot stop every attack because the threat actors are motivated to find a way through. Whether that's through traditional means or other means, social engineering, blackmail, whatever the case, and therefore we need to be prepared, and that is ultimately what resilience really means.